Hello friends, welcome back to the Selenium tutorials. In this tutorial we would be learning very important topic, which is a sure shot interview question, that is how to read write data from Excel files. So let's start learning that. So if you intend to read and write data to and from Excel files using Java, you would need the jar files. It is dependent on the Apache POI jar files, which you need to download and configure in your Java project. So this is the website which I am just highlighting, poi.apache.org/download.html. This is the site from where you'll get all the POI jar files. So I'll show you right now. The site looks like this. So this is the site, and if you would see the line which I am highlighting right now, the latest stable release is Apache POI 3.17. So you have to just download it. Just click this link and the jar files would get downloaded. Store it in any location in your system. I have these files over here. Like when the download would get completed, you'll have this kind of zip file, and what you'll have to do is just extract. So you have to just click over here, and here in the binary distribution, if you'd see, there is something called POI bin 3.17 something .zip. So when you download this, you will get this kind of a zip file, which you have to just unzip it, and once you unzip it, you will find these kind of files. So these are the files which I am just highlighting. These are the jar files which you need to configure in your Java project. There are few more jar files. If you go to the lib folder, there are few more jar files which we need to configure. And if I once again move back, there is another folder called IOException lib, and here are a couple of jar files, which all these jar files need to be configured in your Java project. So let's go ahead and configure these jar files within our Java project. You could use either Eclipse or Intellij. I'll show you in both the editors how to configure these jar files in the project. First I'll show you in Eclipse. So this is the project which I have created. The name of the project is Excel. So if I need to configure those jar files in my Excel project, the steps are exactly same as we configured the Selenium jar files in the previous videos I have shown. So for configuring these POI jar files, the steps are exactly same. What you have to do is right click on your project name, go to build path, select the last option, configure build path. Here go to the libraries tab. I am already at the libraries tab. Go to the libraries tab and click on add external jars, and now navigate to the location where you have your jar files. So I have my jar files at this location. So my jar files are over here. You just need the path where your jar files are residing. So I'll just copy this path, paste it over here, click on open. So here you could see the jar files are available. Just select this using the shift buttons, select all, and click on the open button. So you will see these files are getting added to your project. Don't forget, there are few more jar files which we need to add. So once again, click add external jars, go to the lib folder, select all these files, once again click on open, and few more jar files are remaining which are there in the IOException lib folder. Once again select both these files and click on the open button, and finally click on apply, and then apply and close. So if you see in the project, you will find something called the reference library on the project explorer. If I just click this arrow over here, you'll see all jar files are now in the project. So we have successfully configured all the jar files for Excel in our Excel project. So this was how to configure it on Eclipse IDE. If you wish to do the same thing on Intellij, how would you do that? So let's move to the Intellij editor. So here is my Intellij editor, and this is my project. Here the project name is Excel handling. Process is somewhat similar, not much difference. What you have to do over here is if you have your project in Intellij, right click on the project name, and here go to the option open module settings. Here I'm just highlighting it, and I'm clicking open module settings option. Another window will come up. So here on this window, if you see on the left hand sides, you could see something called modules. There are multiple options like project, libraries, facets. We have to go to the modules option, and within the module option on the right hand side we have to go to the dependencies tab. Like here you could see sources, paths, but we need to go to the dependencies tab. Make sure you are on the dependencies tab, and once you are on the dependencies tab, what you have to do is click on this green plus button on the right hand side. So I'm clicking it over here. Click on the green plus button which is there on the right hand side. Here you will have three options. Select the first option, that is jars or directories. So once you click over there, you will get another window. Here you have to provide the path where your jar files are residing. So I have my jar files at this path. You could see it is showing those jar files. The process is same over here. You have to select all these jar files, which I am doing right now. See, I selected these jar files and I am now clicking the OK button. Similar to Eclipse, now these jar files are available within my project. We have few more jar files, don't forget to include them. So the procedure is same. So you go to the path, this is the location. So we had few jar files in the lib folder. I'll just expand the lib folder, select all these jar files, click on OK, and finally there were few in the IOException folder. We need to include those as well. So here we go. Finally click OK, and once everything is done, click on apply and OK. So with this, the POI jar files are available within the project, and if you see external libraries over here, you could see the jar files which we just added. So now we are done with the configurations. We have included the POI jar files within the Java project. Now let's move ahead and write the actual code to read and write data from Excel. So you could write it in the Intellij editor or the Eclipse editor, whichever you find easy. I'm using the Eclipse editor for now. So I'll start writing the code over here. Now whenever you wish to read or write any sort of files, not only Excel files, any sort of files, the steps are pretty similar. Like for the first step would be you'll need the file object. So I'll go ahead and create the file object like this. The syntax is file, any object name, obj file, I'm giving the object name, is equal to new file. And here within the brackets we should provide the path of the file which you wish to read or write. So in our case we have this Excel file. I'll show you. This is the Excel file which we are trying to read and write. This Excel file is stored at this location. So this is the path. I'm just copying the path of the Excel file and providing it over here. And make sure you are using double backslashes, because Java does not understand the single backslash. You need to provide double backslashes, and you have to provide the file name as it is with the extension. So the file name is, in our case, that is sample excel with the extension sample .xlsx. If we are using an older version of Microsoft Office, then you will have to provide the extension as XLS. Since I am using 2010, so its extension is XLSX. If you are using an older version, older than 2007, then you'll have to use the extension as XLS. So here you have provided the file path which we desire to read, and if you see, there are some errors which have popped up. So if I just scroll on this file, it is giving me an option to import the file. Now this is very important. If you are not importing java.io.file, this error won't go, so it is very important to import this. So the file object is ready, which means our first step is done. Now the second step, first we'll do the part of reading the data from the Excel. So whenever we wish to read data from any file, we need the file input stream object. I repeat, the file input stream object. So we'll create the file input stream object like this. The syntax is file input stream, any object name. I'm giving the name as obj fis is equal to new file stream. So I just copy this, paste it over here, and within the brackets I should pass the file object we created in step 1. So I'm just using the obj file object over here. Again, few errors have popped up. Just scroll over there and import file input stream. On the right hand side, still the error is coming. It is showing us two options, like either do a throw or surround it with try catch. For now, I'm just throwing the declaration, and once I do that, there is something called file not found exception coming over here, where the main method is declared. So this is important, else the errors will not go, and once you do that, by default the file not found exception is also getting imported on line number 3, which I'm just highlighting. So the first step of creating the file object, the second step creating the file input stream object, which would be used for reading the data from the file, we have created. Now we come to the most important part, where we would be creating the objects of the Excel file. So let's go ahead and create the first object of Excel, that is XSSF workbook. Now this is the Excel file which we are trying to read. This is a workbook. So the first step would be to create the workbook object. So we create the workbook object using XSSF workbook. Any object name, I'm using obj wk object of workbook is equal to new XSSF workbook, and here will provide the path of the input stream, the object of the input stream, which is obj fis, which we created in the earlier step. So I provide it over here. It is very simple, it is very hierarchical. First the file object use, and in the second step we use the file input stream object, where we use obj file. Third step is the actual workbook object, where we use the obj fis, which is the file input stream object. It is very simple and absolutely hierarchical. The steps are common whenever you wish to read the data from Excel file. These are the steps which you have to perform. So here we come up again with some errors. So just import XSSF workbook over here. You should get this option because we have already configured the jar files, the POI jar files within our project. So click over here. On the top you will see XSSF workbook has been imported over here. On the right hand side, still it is throwing error. So again we'll use the add throws declaration. Once I do that, throws IOException comes over here, and the previous file not found exception has gone because IOException is the parent of file not found exception. So it covers file not found as well as the IOException. So make sure you do this throws IOException, else the errors won't go. So this was the step where we have created the workbook object. It is hierarchical: file object, input stream object, and workbook object. Each new object is using the previous object. Like next is, now this Excel file which we desire to read may have multiple worksheets. Here we wish to read the sheet which has the name test data. So the next step would be to create an object of the worksheet. So let's do that. So syntax is XSSF. If you do a control space, you'll get the option we need to use sheet. So you could see XSSF sheet over here. Object name could be any object name like this. I am using OBJSHT is equal to OBJ workbook. Like this worksheet is present within the workbook, so we are using the previous object of the XSSF workbook. So we have used this object dot get sheet, and within double quotes the name of the sheet from which we need to read the data. The sheet name in our case is test_data. So we have created this sheet object. This is again very hierarchical. First the workbook object, and we use the workbook object to create the sheet object over here, you could see. Now the next step would be which row we have to use. Now in this Excel, in this test data sheet, there would be multiple rows. You should know which row data you intend to read. I intend to read the data which is present in row number 2 and cell A and B. So we have to create the row object. The row object is created like this. We have to use XSSF row, any object name, OBJ row, I am giving the name, is equal to, now we'll use the previous object, that is the sheet object, because these rows are present in the worksheet test data whose object is OBJSHT. So I take this object dot get row, and here we have to pass the index, like which row number you desire to read. So if I am passing 1 over here, it will read the second row which I am highlighting right now, because internally the indexing begins from 0. So the first row will have index 0, the second row will have index 1. Since I am wishing to read row number 2, I have passed the index as 1. Again you will see it is beautiful, it is very hierarchical. Row object we have created from the sheet object. Sheet object was in turn created from the workbook object. So we have created the row object. The next thing is the cell, because this row number 2 will have multiple cells. Which cell I desire to read? I desire to read cell number B, which is there at row number 2. So if I wish to read this test 1, we have to create the cell object like this. XSSF cell, any object name, I'm giving the name as OBJ cell, is equal to, I'll use the previous row object, OBJ row dot get cell and the index of the cell. So if I am wishing to read this cell which is at column 2, here I will pass 1, because internally the indexing begins from 0. So we are at this point and we are in a position to read test 1. So if I want to see the data which is there in row number 2, cell number 2, I have to use this obj cell method. I use this obj cell dot get string cell value. Now why we have used get string cell value? Here if you see, this row 2 column 2 holds a string. Because it is holding a string, I am using get string cell value. If I had to read this, then I could not have used get string cell value because it is a numeric value. So if I wish to read the data which is there in row 2 column 1, what I'll have to do is use the same cell object but change its index. Now the index would be 0 because we are trying to read the data which is there on row number 2 but column number 1. So row number 2, the obj row object we have already created, I am just reusing it, but this time I have assigned the get cell index as 0. So this time it will try to read this one which is there in row number 2, column number 1. But since this data is numeric, what we'll have to use is obj cell dot get numeric cell value. So this is how we read, like we have to see which data type is of the row and column, and depending on that we have to select whether we have to use get string value or get numeric value, which we have done. So if we wish to see like what are the values, whether we are correctly fetching the values, we will just use a system.out.println. So we'll just first print the string value, that was test1, so I'll use system.out.println like this. So system.out.println, and within the brackets the entire thing, get string value, make sure there are no syntax errors. So this line will print test1 in the console, and if we wish to see the number, we'll just print this thing on the console like this. So if everything is correct, this program we should see the values test1 and serial number 1 on the console. So let's execute this program and see whether everything is right. Make sure you close the Excel file before you execute it. So I've just closed this Excel file. Now let's execute this code. So to execute it, we could use the run option on the top, or just do a right click, do a run as Java application. Let's see what happens. So if you see on the console, it has correctly printed test1 and 1.0. It interprets it in decimal format, so it has written 1.0 over here. So we have correctly read the data from the Excel file. So we have successfully read the data from the Excel file. Now we'll start learning how to actually write the data in the Excel file. So let's start learning that. So we used file input stream for reading the data from the Excel file. For writing the data, we would use something called file output stream. But remember one thing, once you are done with reading the data, you should close the input stream object, else there are chances that the code may fail and you may get an error. So to avoid that, once you are done with the reading, just close this. So objfis was the input stream object, which I'll just close. So objfis dot close, so that the file input stream and the output stream will not interfere with each other, and there won't be any runtime errors. So next step is I'll create the file output stream object like this. Procedure is exactly same. File output stream, any object name obj, I give the name as objfos is equal to new file output stream, and within the brackets the same file object, because we are writing in the same Excel. So I just paste the obj file over here. The errors have come up. We'll have to import the file output stream classes. So I am just importing it. On the top you would see the file output stream class would have got imported. Here is the file output stream class which has got imported. I have just highlighted, and there are no errors over here right now. So this is the Excel which we are trying to update. So we'll update a cell of this Excel. For example, if I wish to update the status of this test as pass, PASS pass, so I need to update the row number 2 and cell number 3. So how to do this update programmatically, we'll see right now. So what you have to do is, if you remember the obj row which we had created at line number 26, which I am highlighting, like we have this obj row object ready with us. So when I wish to update any row, any cell within row number 2, I can reuse the object. I can reuse this obj row which I had created earlier. So I'll use this obj row to update the cell. So here I will write obj row dot create cell. Whenever we have to update, we have to write in the cell, we should use create cell. When you are reading the data, you remember we had used get cell. I am highlighting right now on line number 32. When we were trying to read the data, we used get cell. But when we are trying to write the data, we should use create cell and we should pass the column index. Now we are updating column number 3, the C column. So the index of this C column would be 2, because internally the indices begin from 0. So obj row dot create cell dot set cell value. And here you have to pass the value which you are intending to update. So I am writing here pass. So this line would actually update this cell with the value pass. So now comes the most important part of the code. So once we have updated the cell which we wish to update, next part is very important. We should use the workbook object now. So the workbook object which I had created on line number 24 here. So I'm using the workbook object, and here I have to instruct the workbook to write. So obj workbook dot write. And if you see, it is suggesting me what should be the parameter. The parameter is the output stream. So we have stored the output stream in the object objFOS. The objFOS object which we created on line number 36, which I am just highlighting. So here you'd use obj workbook dot write, and in the brackets the output file stream object. So this is the complete code. Don't forget this line, else your update won't work. It may happen that your Excel may get corrupted. So this is very important, please do not forget that. And after this point you have completed, so what you can do is you could close your file output stream. The same way we close the input stream, I am closing the output stream like this. So the code is ready. So let's execute this code and check whether updates are getting correctly done on the Excel or we are facing any errors. One important thing before executing the code, make sure your Excel is closed, which I am doing right now. So my Excel is closed. I have saved this code and now I am executing this. I am clicking on this green button at the top. Let's see what happens. So the execution is complete. The values which we had read are appearing on the console. We'll just see what happens to the file. So if we see the file, I'm just opening this file, and if you see row number 2, column number 3, the status has correctly been updated as pass, which means the code which we have written has worked absolutely fine and it is working. So we have learned how to read and write the data from and to an Excel file using Java.